Welcome to our deep dive into Chapter 3 of the CIMA E2 syllabus. Today, we are going to build a practical guide to help you advise any company on how to survive and, even thrive in this age of digital disruption. This question right here is at the absolute heart of what we're exploring. We're going to go way beyond just textbook definitions to get into the strategic thinking you'll need for the real world and, of course, for your E2 exam. So here's our main goal. By the end of this session, you'll have the frameworks to not just analyze and evaluate, but to confidently advise on creating business models that are truly built to withstand the powerful forces of digital change. Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to follow the official chapter structure, broken down into these 6 key areas. It's a really logical flow that'll build your understanding from the ground up. So let's get started. First up, we've got to understand the force that is literally reshaping entire industries. This covers syllabus sections 3.1 and 3.2, and it's all about getting to grips with the fundamental nature of the threat. The really important thing to grasp here is that this isn't about small, incremental improvements. We're not talking about a slightly better product. Disruptive technology introduces a completely new way of doing things, one that can make even the most successful business models totally obsolete. Now, this slide gets to the core of Clayton Christensen's famous innovator's dilemma. You see, successful companies are great at sustaining innovation, making their products better for their best customers. The reason they fail is because they logically and rationally ignore these disruptive innovations. At first, they just look cheap, inferior, and targeted at a tiny, unprofitable market. It's a trap. And as you can see, disruption isn't just a tech sector thing. It's happening everywhere. From Amazon Web Services changing how companies do IT, to Airbnb turning the hospitality industry on its head without owning a single hotel. The common thread here? It's often a new, asset-light, platform-based business model. Okay, so we understand the threat. Now let's move on to section 3.3. How do we actually prepare for these massive changes? Well, it's time to talk strategy. So how should a company respond? Well, it really depends on your market power and how certain you are about the trend. A giant like Apple might try to actually shape the future. A company like Walmart has to adapt to e-commerce. It's not an option. If the future is murky, you might just hedge your bets with smaller investments, or simply reserve the right to play, just to keep your options open. All right, now we're moving into sections 3.4 and 3.5. And this is a really key transition. We're going from understanding the external threat to mobilizing the internal response. And let me tell you, that response has to start right at the top with leadership. What's so critical to understand is that the biggest barrier to change often isn't money or technology. It's the company's own culture. It's this psychology of denial, these internal myths that people tell themselves that prevent them from seeing the danger until it is way too late. Success can make you complacent. These myths are absolute gold for your exams because they test if you can tell the difference between just doing things and real transformation. So for your exam, remember this. Digital isn't a project with a finish line. It's an ongoing way of doing business that has to be owned by the CEO and woven into the fabric of the company. Now, from a governance point of view, the board's role has to completely evolve. It's not enough to just look at the financial reports anymore. They have to make sure the entire organization is digitally literate, set a clear strategy for the digital world, and keep a close eye on new risks like cybersecurity and data privacy. This is a core part of their job now. This brings us to section 3.6, what I like to call the execution playbook. We get the threat, we have the right leadership mindset. So how do you actually go about building a disruptive business model? So organizations really face a fundamental choice. Do we build it or do we buy it? You can build new capabilities yourself, in-house. That gives you tons of control, but it's often really slow. The alternative is to acquire a company, which gets you speed and market access, but usually comes with a hefty price tag and a messy integration process. The right path? It depends entirely on your strategy and how much time you have. The platform model is one of the most powerful disruptive forces out there. Think about companies like Airbnb, Uber, or Apple's App Store. They don't actually produce the core product or service. What they do is create and control the network that connects the producers and the consumers. Their value just explodes as the network grows, which creates this incredibly powerful competitive advantage. Let's move on to section 3.7. Look, a brilliant business model is totally useless without the engine to actually run it. And that engine is the digital operating model. This slide highlights something that is absolutely critical. Your business model and your operating model have to be perfectly aligned. If your whole strategy is based on personalized customer analytics, you better have a data-powered engine. If you're competing on being the cheapest, you need an extra frugal model that is just ruthless about optimizing every single process. ING Bank is such a great case study of this. To compete with all these nimble, fast-moving fintech startups, this huge traditional bank had to completely redesign how it worked internally. They broke down all the old silos and adopted an agile, squad-based model to get faster and more customer-focused. It just goes to show that even the biggest, most established companies can change. And finally, let's talk about Section 3.8, because honestly, the most sophisticated strategy and the most brilliant operating model will completely fail if you don't have the right people and the right culture to make it happen. Building a digital workforce is not just about hiring a few data scientists. It's a complete transformation. It means new skills in data and analytics, new agile ways of working, and maybe most importantly, a new mindset from leadership, right from the very top, that embraces trying new things, taking smart risks, and always, always learning. So, we have covered a ton of ground. Let's take a second and quickly recap the key takeaways from this really crucial chapter on business models. We've moved pretty logically here, right? We started by understanding the external threat of disruption, then we moved to figuring out an internal strategic response, and finally, we've built the execution playbook with the right operating model and the right people. And this is exactly why all this matters for your E2 exam. You're not just going to be asked to define these things. You'll be expected to use these very concepts to analyze a company's situation, evaluate its strategy, and advise on its performance. You have to be able to link strategy, governance, and the operating model together into one single coherent argument.